In 490 BC, a vast army disembarked on the quiet sands of a place called Marathon, but this was no ordinary landing. This was the force of the Persian Empire, commanded in the name of one man, Darius the Great, King of Kings.
We stand together,
It was one of the
Athenian,
most formidable military machines the ancient world had seen. Their mission was direct and merciless: punish Athens for its defiance, march 26 miles to its gates, and crush its fragile democracy. Yet standing in their way was not another empire nor a professional army, but a body of citizen soldiers, farmers and craftsmen, outnumbered at least 2 to 1. By every rule of logic, Athens should have been doomed. Their city should have become just another line in the Persian record of conquest. But that is not what happened. Instead, the Athenians delivered one of the most astonishing defeats in military history. A victory so profound that it shaped the future of Western civilization. How did a small fledgling democracy withstand the might of Persia? What gamble did Athens take that altered history itself? To answer that, we must step back nearly 10 years to the Greek cities of Ionia on the coast of what is now Turkey. For half a century, they had been under Persian rule. The Persians were often pragmatic administrators, but they ruled through local tyrants and exacted heavy tribute, a system bitterly resented by the fiercely independent Greeks. In 499 BC, under the leadership of Aristagoras of Miletus, the Ionian Greeks rose in revolt. Aristagoras sought allies. He first went to Sparta, Greece's greatest military power, tempting them with maps and promises of Persian wealth. But the Spartans, cautious and inward-looking, declined. Why march 3 months away from home for a war that did not touch their soil? So Aristagoras turned to Athens. He appealed not to their greed, but to their kinship, reminding them that Miletus was once an Athenian colony, and Athens at this moment was alive with a radical new idea: democracy. Only a few years earlier, they had expelled their own tyrant. The cause of liberating fellow Greeks struck a powerful chord. Athens agreed, dispatching 20 warships, joined by 5 from Eretria. In 498 BC, this modest fleet struck at Sardis, the Persian regional capital. They captured the lower town, and in the chaos, a fire consumed much of the city, including a sacred temple. To the Greeks, it was a symbolic triumph, but their retreat was crushed by a Persian army. The Athenians sailed home, leaving the Ionian revolt to collapse. By 494 BC, Miletus was destroyed. Yet for Darius, this was only the beginning. The burning of Sardis and Athens' involvement was a personal insult. According to Herodotus, the great king was so incensed that he shot an arrow into the sky, praying for vengeance, and commanded the servant to remind him at every meal, "Master, remember the Athenians." For Persia, this was no longer about mere expansion. It was about revenge. In the summer of 490 BC, Darius unleashed his retribution. A fleet of 600 ships carried around 25,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry under the command of Datis and Artaphernes, the king's own nephew. They sacked Eretria in punishment, then sailed south and landed at Marathon, just 26 miles from Athens. The choice of Marathon was deliberate. Its broad plain was perfect for the Persians' most feared weapon, cavalry. Their plan was simple: rain arrows upon the Greeks, unleash horsemen to shatter their lines, and let the infantry sweep away the remnants. The Persian infantry was drawn from across the empire, light troops with wicker shields and short spears, mobile and versatile. But those very qualities would prove their undoing. When word of the landing reached Athens, panic swept the city. Every able-bodied citizen was summoned. These were not professionals but ordinary men, farmers, potters, merchants, who had to purchase their own equipment: the bronze cuirass, greaves, the iconic Corinthian helmet, and the great Espis shield. Their main weapon was the 9-foot dory spear. The shield was ski, heavy, round, and borne on the forearm. It locked each man to his neighbor, forming the phalanx, a living wall of bronze and wood, bristling with spears. It was a formation built on unity and discipline, designed for brutal, close-quarter collision. Athens mustered about 9,000 hoplites, joined by 1,000 from their loyal allies, the city of Plataea. Still, they were heavily outnumbered, and the help they desperately needed from Sparta would not come. A runner, Phidippides, covered an astonishing 150 miles in 2 days to beg for aid. The Spartans promised support, but only after the completion of a religious festival. It would be too late. At Marathon, the Athenians would stand alone. They marched to the hills overlooking the Persian camp, blocking the roads to Athens. For days, a tense stalemate unfolded. The Persians were confident. They had the perfect ground for cavalry and the support of exiled Athenian tyrant Hippias, hoping to spark revolt within the city. Time was on their side. For the Athenians, the situation was dire. Their army was commanded by 10 generals, one from each tribe, plus the war archon Callimachus, who held the deciding vote. Half the generals wanted to wait for Sparta, but one man, Miltiades, argued with fiery urgency. He knew Persia well. He had once served under them. He knew their strengths, and more importantly, their weaknesses. To delay was to invite betrayal. The choice was stark: slavery under Persia or a chance at glory. The debate raged in the Athenian camp. Half the generals urged caution, but Miltiades pressed with urgency. He turned to Callimachus, the war archon, and framed the choice in stark terms: either slavery under Persia or a victory that will elevate Athens as the greatest city in Greece. Callimachus was persuaded, and with his deciding vote, the Athenians resolved to fight. Yet Miltiades waited. The generals who sided with him ceded their command days, effectively granting him overall leadership. He needed the perfect moment, for one obstacle still loomed: the Persian cavalry. The phalanx was formidable front-on but vulnerable to flanking. Cavalry could tear it apart. Then fortune struck. For reasons still debated, the Persian cavalry suddenly vanished from the plain. Perhaps they had been re-embarked onto ships for a surprise assault on Athens. Perhaps they were away in search of water. Whatever the cause, Miltiades knew this was the blunder he had prayed for. Without cavalry, the Persians had lost their hammer blows. At dawn, Miltiades gave the order to advance, but his plan was radical. The conventional Greek line was 8 men deep across its entire width. Miltiades, however, thinned the center to as few as 4 men deep, stretching his line to equal the Persian front. With the men saved, he reinforced the flanks. The right wing, under Callimachus himself, and the left, held entirely by the loyal Plataeans, were now powerfully strong. It was a calculated risk: invite the Persians to break through a fragile center, only to be trapped when the wings crushed their weaker flanks. A gamble of genius. As the sun rose, 10,000 hoplites, burdened with more than 50 pounds of bronze and wood, began their march. When they entered the deadly range of Persian archers, Miltiades issued an order no one expected: charge! The sight must have stunned the Persians. Heavy infantry running nearly a mile across open ground, seemingly without archers or horsemen to cover them. To Persian eyes, it looked suicidal. Was this a desperate mob or a plan beyond their comprehension? The charge was brilliant. By running, the Greeks spent less time beneath a hail of arrows. Most shafts clattered harmlessly against bronze armor and Aspis shields. More importantly, the momentum of the sprint turned their clash into a shattering collision. The Persians had wanted a ranged battle. What they got was a brutal melee. On the wings, the effect was immediate. Heavily armored Greeks smashed into lighter Persian levies. 9-foot spears drove through weaker shields and unarmored flesh. The Persian wings collapsed almost at once, fleeing in terror towards the ships. But at the center, the situation was grave. The elite Persian infantry, Persians themselves and the fierce Saka warriors, drove hard into the thinned Greek line. The center buckled, forced back step by step. For a moment it seemed disaster loomed. The Persians had punched through, yet discipline held. The Greek center bent, but did not break. At that precise moment, the victorious Greek flanks executed their deadly maneuver. They wheeled inward, falling upon the exposed sides of the Persian elite. From triumph to terror, the Persians suddenly found themselves encircled. Encirclement is every soldier's nightmare. Panic surged. Order disintegrated. The Persian center, once pressing forward, now collapsed into chaos. Men were cut down from every side. The rout became complete. Thousands fled towards the marshes, only to be trapped in mud and slaughtered. Others ran for the sea, desperate to reach their ships. The Greeks pursued relentlessly, hacking down fugitives in the surf. The fight raged on the shoreline. One Athenian, Cynegeirus, seized a Persian vessel with his bare hands, only to have his arm severed by an axe. When the carnage ceased, the scale was staggering. Some 6,400 Persians lay dead. The Athenians had lost just 192, the Plataeans only 11. Yet even in victory, peril remained. The Persian fleet was not retreating home. It rounded the Cape of Attica, racing towards an undefended Athens, and the missing cavalry. They were likely on those ships, ready to land and link with Persian sympathizers within the city. The Athenians now faced an unimaginable ordeal. After running a mile in armor, fighting a desperate battle, and chasing an enemy to the sea, they had one task left: cover 26 miles back to Athens in a forced march. Exhausted, yet unbroken, they made it. As the Persian fleet appeared off the coast, the same Athenian army that had annihilated them at Marathon now stood ready again in full battle line. The Persians hesitated. They knew it was over. They turned their ships back to Asia. The invasion had failed. Athens was safe. The Battle of Marathon was far more than a clash of arms. It shattered the myth of Persian invincibility. For the first time, a Greek police had stood against the empire and won. Confidence surged across Greece, a confidence that would prove vital when Xerxes returned a decade later with an even greater host. For Athens, it was transformative. A citizen army fighting for freedom rather than tribute had toppled an imperial force. The victory became proof that democracy could stand against tyranny. It fueled the self-belief that launched Athens into its golden age, an era of philosophy, art and politics that shaped the Western world. The fallen were honored with burial on the battlefield itself, a sacred mound that still stands today. Callimachus, who cast the deciding vote for battle, lay among them, a symbol of courage and destiny. The memory endured in many forms. One was the legend of Pheidippides, the runner who inspired the modern marathon. But the truer legacy is deeper, that a small, determined people, armed with discipline and resolve, can defy overwhelming odds and alter history itself. So we must ask, what truly won Marathon? The bravery of free citizens, the brilliance of Miltiades' gamble, or the blunders of Persia? And perhaps more importantly, if you had stood on that field, would you have chosen to fight or to wait?